Russian commanders swore it was impossible. Western intelligence agencies are still struggling to process the scale of what happened. And in Moscow, Vladimir Putin is desperately trying to hide this from his own people. We are not talking about a small skirmish. We are talking about 9,000 men, the equivalent of an entire division of the Russian army. In a span of just 72 hours, these men were not killed, they were not wounded, they simply dropped their weapons and raised white flags. This is the story of the largest mass surrender since World War II. It is the story of the humiliating fall of General Victor Sakalov, one of Putin's most trusted men. But above all, it is the story of how a system based on fear and lies collapsed in the face of reality. Today, we are going to dissect what happened in that 40-kilometer sector, why General Sakalov was taken away by the FSB, and what this surrender tells us about the future of this war. It all started with something military analysts call a cascade of failures. For weeks, there were rumors that the Russian southern sector was in trouble, but what Ukrainian intelligence picked up earlier this week was unprecedented. First, encrypted communications ceased. Suddenly, Russian units began using open radio frequencies. They were cries for help, desperate pleas that anyone with a ham radio could hear. And then, silence. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones flew over the lines and saw the unthinkable. Trenches that should have been manned were empty, artillery positions abandoned, and across 40 kilometers of the front line, white flags began to appear. General Victor Sakalov, the commander of this sector, was sitting 30 kilometers in the rear. He assured the Kremlin that the line was impenetrable. He lied, or perhaps he was the last to know. Either way, when Ukrainian forces advanced, they met no resistance. They found thousands of men walking toward them with their hands up. But how does an entire division just give up? It wasn't cowardice. Interrogations with the prisoners reveal a picture of systemic collapse triggered by 5 devastating factors. First, logistics. Precision Ukrainian strikes cut off 70% of supplies. We're talking about soldiers who hadn't seen a hot meal in 4 days. Ammunition was rationed to 10 rounds per day per soldier. Simple injuries became a death sentence due to the lack of medicine. Second, the collapse of leadership, and this is crucial. Reports confirm that junior officers and sergeants fled before the soldiers did. Entire units woke up to find their commanders had disappeared in the night, leaving them to die. Third, the blackout. Ukrainian electronic warfare was so effective that frontline units couldn't contact headquarters. They called for artillery and received static. They felt, and indeed were, abandoned. Fourth, information warfare. Ukraine didn't bombard these troops with explosives, but with information. Drones dropped leaflets with step-by-step instructions on how to surrender safely. Radios broadcast the guarantees of the Geneva Conventions. And fifth, the most human factor of all, rationality. These soldiers realized that dying in that trench for a piece of land that would be lost anyway was pointless. Between certain death and life as a prisoner, 9,000 men chose to live. While white flags were rising on the front, General Victor Sakalov's fate was being sealed in Moscow. Sakalov was no rookie, a veteran of Syria and Chechnya. He was the man who promised Putin his sector would never fall. The Kremlin's reaction was swift and brutal. Sakalov wasn't called in to explain the situation. He was summoned to be punished. Sources indicate he was escorted by FSB agents, had his communications confiscated, and his staff detained. Putin doesn't see this as a military failure to be fixed, but as a betrayal to be avenged. Sources inside Moscow suggest that 17 other officers have already been arrested. There is talk of military tribunals for treason. And here is the tragic irony of the Russian regime. By focusing on punishment and terror, Putin ensures that the next disaster is inevitable. Fearful generals don't report problems, they hide failures, and armies that hide failures lose wars. The immediate military consequences are massive. Ukraine didn't just recover territory, they captured an arsenal. We're talking about 47 tanks, 128 armored vehicles, and nearly 70 artillery pieces, plus 15,000 small arms. Ammunition that was meant to be used against Ukraine will now be used by Ukraine. But the psychological impact is even greater. President Zelenskyy went on television shortly after the confirmation. He didn't mock the Russians, he was strategic. He said, "Today, 9,000 Russian soldiers chose life." He assured mothers and wives in Russia that their sons would be treated well. By doing this, Zelenskyy destroyed Putin's narrative that Ukrainians are monsters. He showed that surrender is a safe option. This creates a virus inside the Russian army. Every soldier who hears about this will ask themselves, if they surrendered and are alive, why should I die here? The disappearance of General Sakalov and the surrender of an entire division exposed the real fragility of the Russian army. It's not a lack of weapons, it's a lack of will. It is the breaking of the social contract between the soldier and his commander. Putin can arrest as many generals as he wants, but he cannot arrest the truth that these 9,000 men discovered, that this war, for them, is not worth dying for. The big question now is, can Moscow suppress this story, or will this be the domino that brings down other sectors of the front? I want to know your opinion. Do you think Putin's fear tactics will work to discipline the army, or will they cause more surrenders like this one? Leave your comment down below. If you want to keep following deep analyses of this conflict, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Until next time.